Have you ever sat in a meeting, listening to everyone else talk, and a cold dread washes over you? Everyone around you seems so confident, so knowledgeable. And you're just waiting. Waiting for someone to point a finger and call you out. To expose you as the one person in the room who has absolutely no idea what they're doing. Or maybe you just got a promotion, a new client, or a stellar performance review. Instead of feeling a surge of pride, your first thought is, oh no, now the expectations are even higher. Now it'll be even more obvious when I fail. You look at your accomplishments, your degree, your job title, your successful project, and you chalk it all up to luck, to good timing, or to fooling people into thinking you're more competent than you really are. This feeling, this persistent, nagging fear of being found out, it has a name. It's called Imposter Syndrome. And if you've ever felt it, I want you to know one thing right now. You are not alone. Not even close. It's an experience that links some of the most brilliant and successful people in the world. Maya Angelou, the celebrated poet and author, once said, I have written 11 books, but each time I think, oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody, and they're going to find me out. Even Albert Einstein, a name synonymous with genius, reportedly described himself as an involuntary swindler, feeling his work didn't deserve the attention it received. So, what is this invisible force that can make a titan of literature and the father of relativity feel like frauds? Imposter syndrome isn't a formal diagnosis in the way that anxiety or depression are. Think of it more as a thought pattern, a cycle of beliefs that traps you in a state of chronic self-doubt. It was first identified in the 1970s by psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, who noticed it was particularly prevalent among high-achieving women. Since then, we've learned it cuts across all genders, professions, and walks of life. From the graduate student starting their first research project to the CEO leading a multinational corporation. It's the internal belief that you're not as smart, or as creative, or as skilled as everyone else seems to think you are. It's the constant fear that, any day now, your incompetence will be revealed to the world. And this fear creates a vicious cycle. When you're given a new task or challenge, your first reaction isn't excitement, it's anxiety. The fear of being exposed kicks in. So, you respond in one of two ways. You either over-prepare, poring over every tiny detail, working late into the night, driven by a desperate need to be perfect so no one can find a flaw. Or, you procrastinate. The anxiety is so overwhelming that you avoid the task until the last possible minute, then rush to complete it in a frantic burst of energy. Either way, when you eventually succeed, and you almost always do, you don't feel relief or a sense of accomplishment. If you over-prepared, you tell yourself, see? I only succeeded because I worked 10 times harder than anyone else would have to. If I were truly smart, it wouldn't have been so difficult. And if you procrastinated, you say, I just got lucky. I pulled it off at the last second. It was a fluke. Next time, I won't be so fortunate. The success never gets internalized. It never becomes part of your identity. Instead of building your confidence, each achievement just resets the cycle and raises the stakes. The fear of being found out grows even stronger. Sound familiar? So, where does this come from? Why do so many of us fall into this trap? The roots can often be traced back to our upbringing. Maybe you grew up in a family that placed a massive emphasis on achievement. Or perhaps you were labeled as the smart one, and now you feel an immense pressure to live up to that label at all times, in all situations. Personality also plays a huge role. People who are natural perfectionists, or those with higher levels of neuroticism, are more susceptible. The perfectionist believes any mistake, no matter how small, is evidence of their underlying failure. And of course, new environments are a classic trigger. Starting a new job, going to college, moving to a new country. These situations place us in a position where we are, by definition, beginners. We're surrounded by people who seem to know the ropes, which can easily ignite that feeling of being an imposter. But here's the paradox. Imposter syndrome often hits the most capable people the hardest. It's a sign that you're pushing yourself, that you're growing, that you're stepping into arenas that challenge you. Low performers rarely worry about being frauds. It's the people who care, the ones who strive for excellence, who are most likely to feel this way. So, we've defined the problem. We see the cycle. Now, how do we break it? How do we silence that nagging voice that tells us we're not good enough? There are many strategies, and we'll get to the practical ones. But first, I want to explore a profound idea, a deep mindset shift that can change the very foundation upon which imposter syndrome is built. It comes from an ancient text, a letter written almost 2,000 years ago. In the second letter to the church in Corinth, the Apostle Paul is describing a moment of profound personal struggle. He speaks of a thorn in his flesh, a source of immense pain and weakness that he begged God to take away. He didn't get the answer he wanted. Instead, he received a revelation that has echoed through centuries. The response from God was this: "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Let's pause on that for a moment. My power is made perfect in weakness. Not in strength, not in perfection, not in having all the answers. In weakness. Therefore, Paul concludes, "I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." Now, regardless of your spiritual background, think about how radically this idea contradicts the core belief of imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome screams at us to hide our weaknesses at all costs. It tells us that our inadequacies, our mistakes, and our gaps in knowledge are shameful secrets that must be concealed. If anyone sees them, we'll be exposed and cast out. Our value is tied directly to our flawless, perfect performance. The wisdom of 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9 offers a completely different path. It suggests that our weaknesses are not liabilities. They are not something to be ashamed of. In fact, they are the very places where true strength can be found. They are the empty spaces that allow something greater, be it grace, resilience, community, or growth, to enter. Think of it like the Japanese art of kintsugi. When a piece of pottery breaks, it's not thrown away. The cracks are meticulously repaired with lacquer mixed with powdered gold. The finished piece isn't just fixed, it's transformed. The lines of breakage, once a symbol of its imperfection, become the most beautiful and celebrated part of its history. The pot is more valuable and more beautiful because it was broken. Imposter syndrome tells you to hide your cracks. This perspective invites you to see them as conduits for gold. So, how do we apply this game-changing mindset in a practical, day-to-day way to fight back against the feeling of being a fraud? Let's start with the first and perhaps most powerful action you can take. Talk about it. Imposter syndrome thrives in silence and isolation. It convinces you that you are the only one who feels this way. The moment you voice that fear, "I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing," you break the spell. Share it with a trusted friend, a mentor, or a colleague. And you will almost certainly be met with a sigh of relief and the words, "Oh, me too." Every time you do this, you're not just getting comfort for yourself. You're offering grace to someone else. You're creating a space where it's okay to be a work in progress. You're living out the idea that power is found not in pretending to be perfect, but in the shared reality of our imperfections. The second strategy is to become a collector of evidence. Imposter syndrome is a feeling, but it presents itself as a fact. Your brain says, "You are a fraud." To fight back, you need to arm yourself with cold, hard data. Start a success file or a brag document. It might feel awkward at first, but it's essential. Every time you get a positive email from a client, save it. When your boss praises your work in a meeting, write it down. When you solve a problem you didn't think you could, document it. This isn't about ego. It's about building a factual counter-narrative to the lies your brain is telling you. When that feeling of being an imposter creeps in, open the file. Read through the concrete, undeniable evidence of your competence and your contributions. This practice helps you separate your feelings from the reality of your abilities. You can say, okay, I feel like a fraud right now, but the facts show that I delivered the project on time, got positive feedback, and helped my team succeed. The third strategy is to reframe your thoughts, especially about failure and mistakes. Someone caught in the imposter cycle sees a mistake as proof of their fundamental inadequacy. But a mistake is not a verdict on your character. It's a data point. It's information. That's all. When you make a mistake, instead of letting your inner critic say, "See? I knew you couldn't do it," consciously reframe the thought. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What will I do differently next time? This shifts you from a fixed mindset, where abilities are static, to a growth mindset, where abilities can be developed. It's the difference between saying, "I am a failure," and "I failed at this task." One is an identity, the other is an event. This is where the power in weakness principle shines. Acknowledging a mistake or a gap in your knowledge isn't a sign of being an imposter. It's a sign of being a learner. It's the starting point for growth. The humility to say, "I don't know, but I can find out," is a superpower. Fourth, embrace the power of good enough. Perfectionism is the fuel that imposter syndrome burns. The quest for a flawless outcome is what leads to the over-preparation and the anxiety. You have to give yourself permission to be human. Aim for excellence, yes. But release yourself from the tyranny of perfection. Sometimes, a B+ job that is finished and submitted on time is infinitely better than an A+ masterpiece that never gets done because you're endlessly tweaking it. Remember, progress over perfection. By letting go of that impossible standard, you take away one of imposter syndrome's most potent weapons. Another powerful tool is to simply acknowledge what you don't know, and add the word, yet. The imposter feeling often comes from comparing your internal, behind the scenes, footage with everyone else's external, highlight reel. You see their polished final product and compare it to your messy, confusing process. When you feel out of your depth, instead of thinking, "I don't know how to do this," add that one simple word. "I don't know how to do this, yet." This tiny addition changes everything. It reframes the situation from a permanent state of incompetence to a temporary state of learning. It acknowledges the weakness, the gap, without shame. It turns a dead end into a doorway. Finally, focus on providing value rather than proving your worth. When you're trapped in imposter syndrome, your focus is entirely inward. Am I smart enough? Will they find me out? Do I belong here? It's an exhausting, self-centered spiral. Try to consciously shift your focus outward. Instead of worrying about your own performance, ask, "How can I help? What does my team need right now? What value can I bring to this project or this conversation?" When you focus on serving others and contributing to a larger goal, you get out of your own head. Your actions become about the work itself, not about validating your own identity. You'll find that your competence flows much more naturally when it's not being crushed under the weight of self-scrutiny. Overcoming imposter syndrome isn't a one-time fix. It's a practice. It's a daily, sometimes hourly, choice to challenge the fraudulent narrative and replace it with a more compassionate and truthful one. It's the choice to speak your fears aloud instead of letting them fester in silence. It's the choice to review your actual accomplishments instead of listening to your distorted feelings. It's the choice to view mistakes as lessons, not as verdicts. And at its deepest level, it's the choice to embrace the profound idea that our weaknesses are not just acceptable, but essential. They are the cracks through which the light gets in. They are the empty spaces where grace can perform its work, where our humanity can connect with the humanity of others, and where our true, resilient, and ever-growing power can be made perfect. The next time that voice whispers in your ear that you are a fraud, that you don't belong, and that you're about to be found out, take a deep breath. Remind yourself of the company you keep, of the Maya Angelous and the Albert Einsteins. Remind yourself that this feeling is not a signal of your inadequacy, but a sign that you are daring greatly, pushing your boundaries, and stepping into the arena of growth. You are not an imposter. You are a work in progress. And that is a beautiful, powerful, and perfectly sufficient thing to be.